Hi everyone. On a recent poll I had people saying that they wanted introduction to painting or watercolor techniques, and others saying that they just wanted to have techniques in general shown to them in a tutorial on that. And so I thought today I would approach that by kind of doing a mixture of both, just to satisfy everybody. And then depending on your responses to this video, I'll know which direction to head next. So I'm just going to hop right in. I have here some 140-pound watercolor paper, which is highly important if you are just starting out. The one thing you can invest in is your paper, and you will not be sorry if you do. In fact, I would probably invest in the paper before I would the paints, because you are going to be drastically more satisfied with your end results if you have the right paper. The 140-pound is a thicker paper. It's going to withstand the water being placed on it, and it's not going to warp, and it will not, the paper won't pill or get grainy and rip up from the water if you have a thicker paper. And preferably with cotton content. This one is probably the higher echelon, but it's a scrap piece that I had from a painting I did for somebody, a commission I did. But so this one is a Arches watercolor and paper, and it is 140 pounds, but I by no means recommend or necessarily encourage anybody to go spending that kind of money on when you're just playing. I didn't start buying it until I started getting commissions and wanting to expand with just my what do you call it, when I wanted to start getting a little bit more invested in my paintings. So what you're seeing me do right now is a technique called wet on dry, which is really just taking your paint. It's what you've probably done since you were a kid playing with watercolor, and painting with your paint right on top of your paper while it is dry. Simple enough, right? It's fun to just play around with that. You can control the paint by drying off your brush. I've got a paper towel in my lap. Just got a paper towel, and I'm drying it off. And this has too much water, so I can come back in here and soak it up now that I have dried off my paintbrush. And that's a really fun way to approach that. So that is your wet on dry. And then I'm going to play around with wet on wet, which is one of my favorite things to do. It's just fun. It's just fun. No getting around it. So I'm going to take some green. And the paints I'm using today are Daniel Smith. Like I said, don't spend a ton of money on your paints just starting out. The first paintings that I did, and I was really happy with them and proud of them, were watercolor, were the Crayola watercolors. I worked at a school at the time and enjoyed playing with them while I was watching the kids and helping them with their art. And I was like, hey, this is fun. So I went, and I had just gotten married, so I was broke. And I can just get a cheap set of watercolors. I can spend $1.60 or $2, whatever it was. And I made a lot of paintings with just that little set and played around. And really, that's all you need just getting started. But it becomes an addiction. So there's your fair warning, and you will not be satisfied with that anymore. You'll want all the watercolors. And so now I have this big Mama Jamma set of watercolors that won't even fit on the screen. And I'm constantly seeing, how can how can I expand my watercolors? And I do use them all, so I mean, they're not going to waste. Okay, so now I've got my wet on dry. That was still wet on dry. The wet on wet comes when you see that the paper is still shiny and wet. I don't know if you can see that. The camera is going to pick up that with. It's still got a shine or sheen, and that is the perfect time. And if you lose some of that sheen, you can come back in, add a little bit of water. It'll displace some of that paint, but that's okay. So now that it's still dry, I come in with some paint. So the paper's wet, right? And I'm coming in with more wet paint or wet paintbrush with my wet paint, and I'm going to drop some in here. And it's going to spread. It's going to go loosey-goosey on us. Some pigments spread more than others. If you're not happy with the spread, you can go in, dab it up, go back in there. If you find that it dries before you want it to, you can go in and with a clean brush, kind of re-wet the paper in that area. And then quickly go in there, grab more of your paint, and put it in there. You're going to notice that there aren't going to be like really harsh lines when it dries, like you get with the wet on dry. That's because the water is spreading that. The water that has soaked into the paper, excuse me, is soaking it up and distributing it to the other places. Now that this is dry, this little one right here, I'm going to go back on top of it and add details. I can do it with this brush. I could do that with a smaller brush as well. This brush is the same size, but it comes to a little bit of a better tip, I find. Paintbrushes, if you invest in them, will last you forever, and take good care of them, and they will last you forever. So let's say I've got this red, and I want to go in with, let's do some shimmer. Can I get some shimmer? Yeah. All right. Mixed up some shimmer paint. All right. This is why I love the Daniel Smith. Isn't that just satisfying? It's just like, it's eye candy. So my paper had dried completely, and then I went back on top with more wet paint. That's the wet on dry. You have more control with your paints. So when I'm doing like a portrait, or wanting to add more detail to an illustration, I'll just come in here, like the veins on this leaf, and I can come in here while the paper underneath is dry. It's so fun to play around with these two very basic techniques. It's the foundation of all watercolor paintings. But playing around with it and seeing what works. Sometimes it's very frustrating because you'll think an area has dried more than it really has, and you'll go and you'll put your paint down, and the whole area will fill with the color you did not want it to fill with. And that can be very frustrating. A tip for that, if your paper looks dry, like these green leaves, green and purple leaves over here, look dry. But if it were me and I was doing a very detailed painting and I wanted to make sure nothing bled when I put it more pigment down, I would touch the paper gently and see if it was, yeah, see this one, this leaf right here is a little bit cool to the touch. And because it is cool to the touch. That tells me that the water is not quite soaked up into it yet. Whereas these two leaves, room temperature. So they are okay for me to add more pigment on top and get the result that I want. Let's see. I love the Daniel Smiths because they do something kind of cool. They granulate, some of them, not all of them, but they're really known for their paints that granulate. And granulation, I can show you. Maybe I'll show you another time if you guys are interested. But certain paints that they came out with spread in a particular way that just is so cool. But I don't want this video to get too long, so I'll save that for another video if you're interested. No pressure, people. No pressure. All right. So while this blue line is still wet, I'm coming back in here and I'm coming in with a clean brush of just water on my brush, and I'm spreading the pigment down at the base to create some shading. And just spreading it through. Pretty cool. Pretty cool in my opinion. You can come up with, there's just so many. You'll find that some of your paints will actually bleed or bloom more. So I've played around with, let me just wet this paper. This paper will hold on to that wet shine longer than others because of the cotton. It soaks up nicely, but it allows you a little bit more playtime before it just completely dries. So I just soaked that whole area with, oh, I'm getting froggy, guys. I'm going to show you some of the granulation. I can't help it. I can't help myself. Okay. So I just come in here with my paint. Okay, and here's the one that granulates. I can't even, you all. It's an obsession. But I go looking for these. Oops, sorry, I hit the camera. I go looking for these paints that do this because I just can't get enough of them. Oops. Oops. I spilled a little bit of water. Okay. So this one, when it dries, it has several colors in it. It looks like a green, just like a gray, purple right now. It looks like that in the pan. But as it dries, other colors come out to play. Now what you just saw me do is I added a little bit of just clean water, and it pushes, that clean water will push the pigmented areas away from that spot, and it'll create like a clearer, less pigmented spot, kind of like craters, like a moon. And I can even go a step further and really accentuate that light area by drying my paintbrush, cleaning it, drying it completely, and then just dabbing my brush in that area to pick up some of the water. And as this dries, I don't know if you can see that. Sorry if I can get it in focus. There, and it might be something you can only see with like a still shot. But anyways, this is starting to break apart already. The longer it sits here and dries, the more it will show. But you'll see some areas have more of a pinky hue, and some of them have a blue hue to it. And there are little grains. I don't know how they do it. It's magic to me. I haven't researched it, but kind of don't want to because I kind of like just the mystery of it because I think it's so cool. But they're known for having their paints that do that. And if you want to see something really cool, because I'm a nerd, I have found this rose gold paint by them, and I just can't even. You put it in there and it blooms like crazy. And bloom meaning that it just, you put the pigment in there and it just spreads like wildfire. It's just so pretty. Sometimes I just sit there and I play with it like that. Does that make me weird? Maybe. I'm okay with that. I'm definitely okay with that. I'm all right with that. That's fine. So I kind of like these for like a galaxy effect. You just tap it down. Doesn't take much. It just pushes all that paint. Anywho. Isn't that pretty? It's so shiny. Is anybody else obsessed with shiny spots like I am? Like, come on. Come on now. It's just cool. Okay. Anywho. So. When it dries, it'll do cool things. But there, look at this glitter. I don't know, can you see it? I don't know if you can. I've got my camera at a weird angle for me to see. Hopefully you can see. There's a lot of shiny, a lot of glitter in this paint. Not all his paints. I buy the ones that have the shimmer in it. But I have very clear ones by him, and then I have some that are just very shiny. All of his paints are highly pigmented though. Anywho, I should do a swatch card of all of them. I've not done that in a while. I don't even know all the ones I have, but anywho. If you like this, I'm starting to ramble, so I'm gonna get off here. But if this is something that you want to see more of, if there's a special technique that you're wanting to see in particular, or maybe you're getting started and I didn't cover something you really had a burning question about, please just message me or comment down below what you wanted to see, and I'll see if I can't make that happen. But thank you all for joining me, and bye.